Yo, yo, what is going on, everybody? Hope you guys had a good day today. This is EMPM. EMPM stands for Engineering Major Philosophy Minor, and this is the channel where you can get a working aerospace engineer's opinions on topics pertaining to engineering, philosophy, politics, cultural stuff, the intersection of all those things, intersectionality, but with philosophy stuff, and of course, we're doing some culture building in this video. We are working on the county of Citrus Valley. And just right off the bat, I want to let you guys know that the mouse movements and the screen movements that you see right now are not at all related to what I'm saying at the moment. And the reason for that is I want to try out a new video format. And the way that's going to work is rather than me doing all the audio and filming things kind of in situ while I'm playing the game, I'm actually going to separate out the two where I'll be doing a recording where I just play the game in the recording with, no talking in the background. And then I'm actually writing out, all the things that I'm going to talk about in the background. And so maybe I'll have a short intro area where I'm explaining what's going on in the city, but then after that, it will be a separately recorded audio. And the reason I want to do that is because I'm noticing that when I film these, there'll be long periods of time where I'm just kind of like rotating the screen around because I'm trying to think of something to say. And if I just do it where I write it out, I find that I have a better vocabulary. My thoughts are just more organized and more coherent, and I'm not having to focus on two different things at once. And I also think that that's going to make the videos shorter in duration, but they'll still be a lot more concise, and I'll have a lot more coherent and interesting things to say. So obviously what you're seeing in front of you on the screen right now is something I recorded with audio. And when I was doing the editing, I looked back and I was like, no, we got to switch up the format here. So this might be split up into two videos because we're also going to play some, external YouTube clips to react to. But let me discuss briefly what's happening in the city for now. So one thing that I've been meaning to do is purchase a bunch of these tiles so that I have, more space to expand. And in this particular video, I've expanded into an area that I didn't have access to before. And so I'm able to make a nice freeway exchange with local collector roads so that traffic will not continue to build up. And you may have seen that in the beginning when the mouse was moving around. But again, we're doing this recording, the audio recording, kind of separately the rest of the video for now. So the other thing that happened too is there's some strange interference with the full 81 tiles modification and the new subway stations. And I noticed after I finished filming this that the subway stations got all messed up again, so I'm gonna have to basically redo all of those. But I'm going to do that outside of, maybe I'll just do it on recording. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the first video that I want to show you guys, which I personally found kind of humorous. And this is a comedian who gave a little Molotov cocktail. What's that? This is a monologue that was given at the Dallas City Council, and it has to do with the pro-life versus pro-choice argument. And so I want to play this video for you. I'm not going to react to it or anything throughout the video. We're just going to listen to it and enjoy, and then I will give a reaction to that video afterwards. So let's go ahead and watch that now.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for allowing me this time to speak to you today. But unfortunately, the subject that I have to speak about is very traumatic and personal to me. With the new abortion legislation brought forth by the Texas Supreme Court allowing the heartbeat bill and limiting abortions to 6 weeks is incredibly unconstitutional. Bill Gates' father, William Gates Sr., would be so disappointed in his son for letting this bill pass, considering Gates' family involvement in starting Planned Parenthood with Margaret Sanger. Currently, I'm in a situation where I have 3 different birthing people pregnant at the same time, and I would like for all of them to have abortions, but unfortunately with this new heartbeat bill, we're unable to get the usual abortions that we often get. I don't like to use any contraception whatsoever because it hinders my performance, so that's why I depend on abortions as a 100% effective form of birth control. But now that the state is making it almost impossible for birthing people to even get an abortion, I'm going to be forced to change my entire lifestyle. Roe versus Wade made it very clear that abortions are completely legal, and I wish Dallas would take a page out of New York's rule book and approve late-term abortion up to 6 hours after birth, because this would solve a lot of problems for expected parents that don't want to have the financial obligation of raising a child that they didn't plan for with money that they don't have. And although I'm perfectly capable of financially supporting a young child, and I know that I would get crazy amount of likes and comments on my TikTok and Instagram accounts from all the cool baby photos, and I could post them in Armani and Gucci baby gear, and it's very easy for me to find birthing people that want me to leave my seed inside them, but unfortunately I don't have the time or the ability to change my vacations to Cabo San Lucas in Jamaica because those are non-refundable flights. And I travel to many other international destinations on a regular basis because my social media influence on Instagram is similar to that of Dan Bilzerian or Chrissy Teigen's. But sadly, with multiple children, this could hinder my ability to travel, and I know this may sound a little selfish, but my doctor and psychiatrist both prescribed me an eat, pray, love lifestyle ever since my first ex-wife and her new fiance died in a fire at our old lake house that she received in the divorce settlement. My two transgender children from the divorce, Decca and Alex, who are both on puberty blockers, were just surrendered to Child Protective Services until I can get my drunk driving problem behind me, because I recently got a DWI outside of the Olive Garden on Technology Boulevard after the all-you-can-eat pasta promotion they have. But regardless of all the Pinot Grigio and Fettuccine Alfredo, I sit here in front of the mayor and city council begging that you use some of the budgetary funds to hire attorneys and file a lawsuit against Governor Abbott, just like you're suing for the mask mandate laws that are currently in place by the governor. Please do something to reverse this unjust, unconstitutional abortion ban so that I can go back to raw dogging birthing people that I meet outside of Arby's and drug rehabilitation centers. And if you're watching this online and you want to smoke Swisher Sweets later and chill with me, hit my Instagram, Pride Times Stein, all one word, and my Twitter, AlexDiet99. My picture is Greta Thunberg wearing a mask, and my bio says, free the nipple. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, so that was a pretty humorous video, and now I want to give a little bit of a response to that, and this is where I've written this out fully. So one thing that'll happen as well is I'll read this, but I'm actually also going to post a link to this video and the full text of what I read right now on Locals as well, so people can go check it out there. And I'm still working on compressing my videos, and especially in 4K, to be small enough that I can actually post them on Locals, but that's another thing. So let's get into this response. I would like to pose 2 fundamental questions regarding this monologue to the audience. I argue that these questions and their answers work together to reveal moral fundamentals which should not be ignored when questioning the legality of abortion, and further serve to open dialogue about the abortion debate more broadly. The first question is straightforward. Do you find this man's speech, in whole or in part, humorous? This is likely an easy question for each of you to answer. It either made you laugh or it did not, and for the sake of this piece, we will omit the neutral response, much like we omit trivial solutions to equations in mathematics and engineering that simply result in 0 equals 0. Regardless of which non-trivial answer was selected, the mere presence of these 2 options can be used to springboard the next and more compelling question. Why did it make you laugh? Why not? Personally, I think the video is very amusing, but I seek to question my own response even more specifically. What exactly about the video did you, EMPM, find funny, and why? If you, EMPM, imagine yourself as someone who did not find the video humorous, why not? Admittedly, while writing this, I understand that this detail of analysis dedicated to a, air quotes, troll video may ruin the captivation of the audience. However, this is a channel that examines philosophy, and so allow me to get philosophical. My intent is to address both sides of the humor questions throughout this discussion. However, I suspect that as I answer my own sentiment towards the monologue, which is humor affirming, the second position, humorless, will be addressed partially, if not totally. Understanding why people, myself included, found this content humorous is related to the treasure that can be found at the bottom of the well of every joke. Some part of it is true and may be hyperbolized or exaggerated. The aspect of the joke which is true may be very serious, embarrassing, offensive, or negative. Yet there may also be a playful, harmless, or good faith element to the joke. For example, when the delivery is right and the audience is willing, one might admit to themselves, you're right, I want my wife or partner to shut up sometimes. Or perhaps, haha, I definitely pour coffee grounds down the garbage disposal in the company's break room. But let us look further at the formulation of these jokes and compare them to the current monologue at hand. The stand-up comedian delivering a routine about problems with spousal communication or break room etiquette begins with a hinting premise that he knows, on a balance of probabilities, is likely applicable to a large majority of audience members. It may begin with something like this. So, something minorly sketchy happened to me from time to time. It's no big deal or anything, but I know some of you might identify with this. Sometimes, hear me out, my wife starts talking. One could replace the final sentence of that premise with, sometimes when rinsing out my own dishes with the filthy public sponge at work, I'm not sure why I do that anyway, and I've nearly clogged the drain myself, I hit the switch on the disposal and it simultaneously blasts powdered beans out of the drain into my recently cleaned dish and or renders the mechanical components of the disposal completely useless, and then clogs the drain. Insert mad emoji here because I can't let this go without complaining via text to the boys. My freshman stand-up comedy skills are on full display here since the punchline has already been written for both these examples in addition to the premise, but let us review and compare. The seemingly offensive or taboo maxim in the first example is that men are generally less conversational than women and prefer periods of silence to drawn-out discourse about topics they find uninteresting. In the second example, the embarrassing truth is levied against the individual who happily disposes of coffee grounds in the sink with remorseless abandon. Now let us turn to the truth of @Alex999's rant to the Dallas City Council. The premise of @Alex999's joke is the assertion that a large majority of abortions are committed and motivated by the desire to avoid familial, social, economic, or physical inconvenience. Further, the premise is exaggerated and hyperbolized by listing in a hysterical fashion all the frivolities of his life that would suffer as a result of proceeding with the 3 pregnancies cited. With these 2 implied premises, we see a juxtaposition of 2 modes of being. Motive being number 1. 2 individuals may make sacrifices and undergo hardship to form a family unit geared toward preserving a life created willingly by conscious life decisions. Or premise number 2. 2 individuals may sacrifice a life created willingly by conscious decision for the sake of individual convenience. The audience may hear this now and immediately seek to bludgeon me with countervailing scenarios which are not yet being accounted for. This is acceptable disagreement. However, regardless of our own personal feelings, I believe it is more than fair to say this was the intent and punchline behind @Alex999's rant. Now is an appropriate moment to look back and see where we started. I began with the hypothesis that we could ask the simple question of whether an individual found Alex's rant funny, why it was funny, and end up with the central moral tensions of the abortion debate. But before exploring that topic, let's finish out the analysis of why or why not there is humor to be found in Alex's speech. The answer is relatively simple for both. The proposition that human life should be sacrificed for the sake of sexual whim and subsequent inconvenience is ridiculous. On the other hand, an individual may be deeply offended and find irritation rather than humor in Alex's rant because perhaps they themselves acted in accordance with the butt of the joke. The question is begged, why pontificate on this matter? Because surely if one concluded after diligent research, thought, reason, religion, individual experience, or a combination thereof, that pregnancies were being terminated mostly out of a desire for material comfort, they may switch the hats of opinion as to which side represents, air quotes, the good. Alternatively, they may submit facts or statistics in the comments attempting to argue the other way, which may also yield some level of productivity as long as it does not entail personal insult or nastiness. Either way, I believe it gets people thinking, and it requests that one dig to the very foundational value at play. Is human life itself, or a society oriented toward fostering, caring for, and providing for human life, intrinsically more valuable than avoiding the myriad of other hardships that come with that? The official EMPM position, and naturally a Citrus Valley core right, is that all human life is intrinsically valuable, particularly during the innocence of infancy and childhood. And so I am pro-life. Yet I did not always used to be this way. Weaved into my journey from pro-choice to pro-life is the explanation as to why @Alex999's rant made me chuckle. There are 3 major experiences I would like to share with you that contributed to my current beliefs. At this point, a disclaimer is warranted. I harbor no ill will to any of the people I speak about in these stories, and I am hopeful that their current life situations are fulfilling and happy. That said, let's go ahead and talk about story number 1. My high school girlfriend and I used to spend a lot of time with one of her best friends. For purposes of anonymity, I will call my ex-girlfriend's friend Jill. My ex-girlfriend, Jill, and I would often sneak through the gate at a local apartment complex to use the pool and hot tub. We would go to house parties, concerts, and participate in other typical high school indulgences. I say indulgences intentionally. Pertinent to this story is that said indulgences included behaviors that my ex and I both knew could result in pregnancy. The same goes for Jill and her boyfriend at the time. Incidentally, Jill lived nearby to one of my best friends. The neighborhood and economic demographic which we grew up in was arguably suburban upper middle class. Property values were high, crime rates were low, job markets were stable, and the public school system was ranked well nationally. The description of our environment as being relatively comfortable despite protestations of our youthful angst might rightfully give the listener the impression that raising an unplanned family in such an environment may not be so bad. It would require sacrifice and elbow grease, but the availability of social and familial support surely would not have been lacking. In the course of their musings, Jill and her boyfriend ended up in the situation of an unplanned pregnancy. The important aspects of this pregnancy were twofold. This was not a pregnancy which resulted from force or abuse, and this was not a pregnancy that posed a life-threatening risk to Jill. The unfortunate part of this story, in my opinion, was not that Jill would have become a mother, and let me add, she would have been a beautiful, caring, loving mother at that. Rather, it was the decision was made to terminate this pregnancy seemingly because motherhood at this time was, air quotes, too early. Let me be forthcoming and admit that I have no idea if this was a contentious decision within the family. I do not know if Jill opposed this decision or advocated for it for herself, and I do not know if Jill regrets the decision to this day. That said, my opinion at the time was sadness, but I still believed it was Jill's right to choose. In retrospect, I would argue against myself that my opinion was wrong. Let's move on to story number 2. I made a lot of friendships in college which persisted afterward for many years. One of these friendships was a group of neighbors. One of these neighbors, who I will call Michelle, earned a degree in a skill set which had high demand and proceeded to obtain a stable career after graduation. In addition to a stable career, she also secured a stable relationship with a man who was very successful, intelligent, and interested in the commitment of marriage. I could tell hearing his self-written vows at their wedding that he was enamored by her and would make a devout husband. During their relationship, Michelle was ardent in her usage of birth control, which also implies that both her and her man were willingly and consciously engaging in activities they knew were conducive to pregnancy. I am having difficulty at this point remembering if the birth control failed before or after their wedding. All I know is that these two events happened within 1 year of each other. Regardless, Michelle was pregnant despite her apparently consistent usage of seemingly reliable birth control methods which had not failed her in the past. Despite the loving relationship, the progress toward a lifelong commitment, career success, sought-after education, and generally comfortable living standards, the decision was made to terminate the pregnancy. Worth repeating is the absence of abuse or risk to motherly health in this situation. It is worth repeating since these exceptional situations are argued by pro-choice advocates as commonplace. When I learned that my friend, in all of her stability, made such a decision, I lapsed back in thought to story number 1, and then story number 3 came to mind. So let's talk about story number 3. My longest standing friend is a man I've known since kindergarten. Him and his younger brother, who will be named Robert for purposes of this piece, were fellow denizens of the suburban upper middle class. We all attended a private Catholic school growing up, and we interacted frequently at school as well as at church on the weekends. Around the same time as story number 1, my friend and I were in college, but Robert was still in high school. Robert had a girlfriend of at least 1 year at the time, and similar to my own life story, him and his girlfriend were knowingly engaging in activities that generally result in pregnancy. Their relationship was whimsical, just like my high school relationship. They loved each other and never had a violent or abusive quarrel. Robert got his girlfriend pregnant, but this story is different than the others. Robert, my long-standing friend, and the families agreed to follow through with the pregnancy. Robert was not even 18 years old, and yet he showed courage and willingly took ownership of his actions' consequences. And yet this story has a tragic ending as well, where, almost into the 3rd trimester, past the appointments, ultrasounds, gender knowledge, and preparations, Robert's girlfriend miscarried, and they lost the pregnancy. To say the family was devastated was an understatement, and they held a service in honor of the lost life shortly thereafter. Recalling this story, story number 1, knowing my own behaviors, and then applying my thoughts to story number 3, I could no longer support the pro-choice position. I came to reason that the beauty of pregnancy is that it will result in a valuable human life, and if I am to believe that rights exist for me, I must believe that rights exist for a human being, even in the womb, at conception. It pained me to know that 2 potential nephews had the right to life, and a likely good life at that, taken from them. It pained me further to realize that if I had been faced with the same decision at Robert's young age, I may have, in an act of sheer cowardice and desire for convenience, decided alongside my ex to deprive those rights of my own child. I indeed had pregnancy scares with my ex, and I distinctly remember the thought process. It went something like this, quote, I won't be able to go to college. I won't be able to see my friends that often. I won't. My thoughts were unquestionably selfish. Learning of Michelle, story number 3, I questioned and confronted myself. That could have been me. It would have been my fault, and I may very well have attempted to use evil to shirk fatherly and husbandly duties. I came to a further revelation, that the controversy surrounding the abortion debate culminates not in the conception itself, but rather in the failing of individuals to fully rationalize the responsibilities of the personal decisions they make to engage in behaviors that result in pregnancy. The statistic I can cite with a good level of confidence is approximately 1 million abortions are administered per year. In my opinion, it is foolish to believe that an overwhelming majority of those pregnancies resulted from forceful situations or are pregnancies with complications. And so I find @Alex999's rant humorous. Not because I intend to be cold-hearted towards others, but because the hyperbole and exaggeration of his monologue articulates an important moral aspect of the abortion debate which Jill, Michelle, and millions of others succumb to. Namely, that many people make believe they are mature enough in their sexuality to willfully engage in activities which result in the known outcome of pregnancy, but suddenly would rather truncate human life than accept the inconveniences and sacrifices associated with an air quote undesirable outcome. I pray for the strength and courage to rid myself completely of my former pro-choice belief, and act like Robert if I ever end up in such a situation. All right, guys, so that's all I had written down for this particular video. And in the next video, we are going to talk about one of these new Greta Thunberg videos. And I like the way this format is working out now that I've done a little bit of editing on the video and I can see kind of how it's turning out. And I think I'm definitely going to pursue this in the future. And of course, in the next video where we talk about Greta, we're still going to be working on this freeway exchange because it's not quite done through this recording. But I have some writing to do. And if you guys have comments, please leave them below. I feel like this might be maybe one of my most contentious videos that I've made yet, and fully understand that there's likely going to be a number of people who are dissatisfied with what I had to write. But I feel really happy about what I wrote. It's a lot more coherent and succinct than me trying to play the game and think of things off the top of my head and just having poor sentence structure and poor vocabulary. And it makes building the city take longer, and it also makes speaking take longer because I'm pausing so much in between. So I hope you guys like this new format, and I'm enjoying it so far. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a good night. Later.